All right, everybody. We are back for season 5 of After the Tassel podcast. With us today, we have our very first guest for the fall. It's Aaron Kirchner, who is a 2009 Bachelor of Arts graduate from Westminster in finance. And so he's going to tell us a little bit about his career after the tassel, some of the things he's been up to since he graduated. So welcome, Aaron, to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So first question right off the bat, what have you been up to since you graduated back in 2009?
It's funny you ask, and it's crazy to think that we've already been out of college since 2009. It seems like yesterday that we were walking through the graduation ceremony. Since graduation, I moved to St. Louis right away, and I kicked off what I thought was going to be a long career in finance. Found out pretty quick that wasn't for me, and was fortunate enough to network with some other alumni and get into medical sales. So I've been in a wide array of medical sales for the last, going on 14, 15 years, or 13, 14 years, in a capacity of roles. In the last few years, I've been fortunate enough to kick off a small business here in St. Louis with a business partner. Personal note, I was able to marry a wonderful wife a few years back. We've got a 2-year-old named Logan. So yeah, quite a bit has happened. But again, like I say, it's hard to believe that 2009 was that many years ago.
Yeah. And here you are doing a podcast.
I know, it's crazy. I never would have thought.
Yeah.
Aaron, what led you to choose Westminster for college?
Well, so I had a few family and friends that went to Westminster. I'd always heard very, very positive raving reviews. At the time, I played baseball, so I was looking at random schools throughout the state. And it really, I graduated high school and the decision started getting pushed into May and June. And my mom and dad were like, all right, like, you're taking your time on this. You really, really got to make a decision. So I had to take a hard look in the mirror. I love baseball, realized baseball wasn't something that was going to be a long-term thing. So I stacked Westminster against the other schools I was considering. Obviously, the reputation. You do a quick search on Google, you can find a million different great, alumni references and very successful people. So I weighed the success that I thought Westminster would set me up for against the other schools, and it became a pretty easy choice and one I was comfortable with in a relatively short fashion. Now, my parents would say that it took way too long for me to get to that decision, but once I decided I need to make the decision, it was wrapped up pretty quick.
Yeah, well, that's a great story. We often, enroll students, weeks before the school year starts. So if that gives you any comfort.
I was so late in the game that the quad was totally filled up and they had to find myself and my roommate housing, and I ended up in Emerson with some sophomores and juniors. So yeah, it was a little too late for comfort, but it worked out.
Well, as far as how you began to prepare for your career before you graduated, what kind of advice can you offer students about preparing for their career, your junior and senior year of college? What did you do and what advice can you offer?
So my advice would be, do not do what I did. I think similar to picking college, I should have started a little bit sooner. Okay. I think Westminster sets you up with a million different resources and avenues to network and really get an understanding of what you potentially want to do. I think first, try to figure out what career avenue you're interested in, you want to go down. And after you narrow that down, I kind of knew I wanted some form of finance, what that looked like. I could have done a better job of really narrowing that down. But I think once any student understands what route they are considering, then I would work with, Westminster, alumni, peers, whatever it looks like to try to get some kind of internship experience, just learn more about whatever that looks like. And that's probably, sophomore, junior year, you can really give yourself a heck of a head start so that come senior year, you may very well even have, I see a lot of kids these days that have potential job offer, or, you're being propelled right into something. I think really, really locking in on that, knowing that your first job is going to help propel you to whatever it is you want to do. It's, the first thing on your resume after your college graduation. It's going to be valuable work experience. But I think doing some legwork before that is really, really going to set you apart. And ultimately, it's going to, help you pick something that ultimately you're going to be doing full time, which it's a lot of time. It's your biggest time commitment that you're going to do. So you may as well pick something that you potentially like or interest in as well.
Yeah, and I'm completely with you on that too. Just being able to have the time before it, and I think it's easier said than done.
Sure.
It's a big decision and a lot to make, but I'm also the mindset too that kind of having that plan it kind of makes everything easier with it, and especially with the direction you go with it too.
Yeah, and honestly, like if you don't know, you don't know. It's going to work itself out. You're going to find good work experience. If you come out of school and you've got to wait tables, bartend. I did that a little bit. If you got to do something like that while you figure it out, it's going to work itself out. I mean, I wouldn't put too much pressure on it, but if you want to find a career path sooner, you can certainly don't jump into those things and have an impact earlier on as well.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, regarding first jobs, what recommendation would you give a student on how to handle their first job out of college?
I think going into the first job, just knowing that it's going to be a challenge. I think being realistic with what it is. You're going into something that going from a college student to a job is a very different transition. So I think first and foremost, I'm a millennial. I'm impatient. I want instant gratification. I want, we all want all those great things. Knowing that there's going to be growing pains. I think just being realistic with going to an 8 to 5 is very, very different. You got to create presentations or whatever it is all the time versus, in college where it's a little bit different. I think understanding that is going to make things easier. I think once you're in that job, trying to find ways to bring value to anyone around you and just simply get the job at hand complete. And that's going to do two things. A, it's going to tell you, I really like what I'm doing. This is something I could see myself doing in this capacity or more capacity. Heck, it may even tell you that it's not something you want to do at all. And then while you're doing that, if you're bringing value to your team, your peers, your direct supervisor, whoever that is, that's going to set you apart. And that's going to open up doors that they may not suck as bad as what you're currently doing today. Just know that first year or two, it's a grind. It's really challenging. And I think coming out of school, it took me 3 to 4 months to finally get my footing under me. Moved to St. Louis, living with a couple college roommates, dealing with traffic, dealing with 8 to 5. It was, my eyes were wide open that I wasn't in college anymore, that I needed to grow up pretty quick. And ultimately, it was a really good experience, but it took me a little bit to get there.
The traffic on 270 is pretty humbling.
Well, and I moved to St. Louis when Highway 40 was closed.
Oh, dang.
So to get from downtown to Clayton, Missouri took roughly like 45 minutes each way for what should be 8-10 minute drive.
Yeah.
So I was in the car an hour and a half each day. That I was like, man, this is wild. I had no idea that real life was this challenging.
You probably listened to a lot of audiobooks at that time, maybe, or
at that time, Spotify didn't exist. Anybody listening is probably going to laugh. It was still CDs in the car, and then whatever was on the radio. Yeah, 2009 was pretty far ago, and you say you still had CDs out.
Yeah. Well, I've heard, people recommend, it is going to be a grind the first 2 years, but instead of thinking about putting 60 hours in and just, ruining work-life balance, maybe put in 45. Would you agree with that synopsis, 45 hours?
I don't think you have to put an hour. I think that if you understand the role that you've been assigned to do and you're able to complete that job, I think employers today have to be cognizant of that, have to respect the work-life balance. There are a lot of opportunities out there. If you're in something that doesn't have that, then you probably need to assess, is it the right thing for you? I mean, if you're coming out of school and you're grinding 60 plus hours, I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow. I think if you're getting the job at hand completed and you're having an impact in a positive way, that should do, and I think that a lot of employers are, COVID did a lot of wonders, to the work-life balance. I think now the work from home is more viewed upon more positively than it once was. And I think maybe getting out of work a little bit early on a Friday or things that at one point in time were probably taboo and not considered okay. I think today we've got there. So I think making sure there's a work-life balance and prioritizing that is incredibly important. But just know, when you're grinding, and I'm still semi-young in my professional career, there's weeks and there's projects that they're going to take it out of you and you're going to have to, really, step up and get the job done. But I think always prioritizing the work-life balance is the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, what does that mean to you? Because you're currently a director of medical sales. You're doing that full time, but you also have the side business called Grillheads with your partner, which we'll get into later. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
How do you manage work-life balance with juggling these two careers?
Yeah, Michelle's funny. I'm probably really bad at it. I am a obsessive. I'm a busy person. I like to work. I like to, whether it was, I had a business with a buddy a few years back where we made kitchen tables, that. My wife and I have got into a couple of rental properties, and then with Grillheads, I'm just, I have a hard time sitting still. So for me, having time with my wife, with Logan, our 2-year-old, I mean, that's the most important thing. The medical career, there's always going to be whatever that career is, Grillheads, I can always find time for that, after Logan goes to bed, on the weekends, early in the morning, things like that. I'm an early riser, so I try to find times that, and really, budget my calendar out so that I'm committed to what it is I'm doing. And then on my evenings and weekends, I try to make sure that's dedicated to family and, family time and whatever personal needs to get done. So I think owning your calendar, accepting who you are as a person, and I'm very wired busy. If I sit on the couch for 10 minutes, I'm always doing something. I'm crazy like that. So, but know that time is the most valuable resource that you have, whether it's, in your career, whatever it is. So realizing that and respecting that's an incredibly important thing.
We agree.
Yeah, and especially with, it's always one of those things that people are preaching that, your work-life balance, how important that is. But, all three of us could sit here and say that it's, even as adults and being further in our careers, it's challenging for all of us. And it's one of those things that I feel it takes practice to do, but also just hearing on your end, especially with having a family, and that it sounds like that's something that really kind of puts in perspective that, it's worth having that, and really makes life enjoyable for that too.
Well, I think for a new grad, I mean, you're gonna come out, you're gonna start a job, but find hobbies that you enjoy. Find something that you enjoy. When I came out, I did a softball league. I love to read. I love time with friends. I mean, prioritize those things. You only get the chance to do those things. You're coming out of college one time in your life. You'll never get your 20s back. So important to set your career out, but it's also important to build those relationships, have that time, the things that, now as a father of a 2-year-old, I don't have time to play in a softball league. At that time, it was great. I think if you prioritize it and you have, your calendar the way you want it, you can do any of those things, and it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So, Aaron, regarding kind of going back to your career, so what do you wish you learned or had a better understanding of your career while you're in college?
I think, again, I mentioned the millennial wanting instant gratification, wanting everything to be done right away in the right way. I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that if you take a step back and you look at things with a longer time horizon, things tend to work out. So I think coming out of school or even in school, if you can look past doing something that's going to impact the moment and think about, what's this action going to do for 2, 3, 4 years down the road? Or, if you have a tough conversation with somebody and you burn that bridge, would it have been better to step back and have that relationship for 5 or 10 years down the road? I mentioned reading. I read a ton of books, and I'm drawing a blank on who said it was an interview or a podcast I listened to. The guy said, in every tough situation I've been in, if I could have just stepped back and assessed it as a 5 or a 10-year relationship or decision, what would I have done different? So I think, in any of that, and again, the millennial attitude, I think taking a step back and thinking things more longer term, what am I doing today that's going to impact that? I think that's the biggest thing, because things will always work themselves out the way they're supposed to, or in a positive way. I think just, shortening that decision-making would have, went a long ways. Hope that made sense.
No, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And I feel that's one of the things, even currently working with students now, is, there's just the worry that everything has to be, perfect when they come out. But at the end of the day, and I tell students this all the time, if you think about it, you graduate at maybe 22 years old, 21 years old. The average retirement age is 63. So you have 2 lifetimes that you're possibly going to be working in. Think how much time that is too. And and you have a lot of time to get where you want to go with that. And I'm with you. It does work itself out. It's
so much time.
Yeah. But I'm with you though. Just I feel I always want it now, and it's got to be correct now. And I know I'm on my end just kind of have more patience with that too.
Yeah, and I think we probably all do. I think I still struggle with it a little bit. Like, you come out of school, I think you have a general idea of what you want to do. I mean, if you're going into like you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, pretty cut and dry. You got to go to medical school, residency. Those are the steps to get there. I think taking that same thought process for like me, I wanted to be some kind of sales leadership. So you, rather than just say, I want to be that today, take a step back. What are the bits and pieces to get there? First, get some kind of entry-level business sales job, perform well at that, and then get into the field you're trying to go at, do really well at that, and then, find other ways to be impact in a leadership capacity. And then, 3 or 4 years down the road, boom, you're there, and you're like, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. But if you look at the entire task and, one jump, it's a pretty hefty jump. So, yeah, kind of like that, medical school mentality of like, here's what has to be done to get there, and I can take as much time or as little to get there as I need.
Yeah.
So speaking of, thinking ahead of your career, you developed this second alternative career during a pandemic, you and your partner.
Yeah.
What led you to that decision? Can you tell us the steps of how that came to fruition?
Yeah, good question, Michelle. So COVID put us in our homes more time than anyone was accustomed to, used to. As I mentioned, very busy body. Didn't know what to do with myself. Couldn't leave the house. And I'd always, and my business partner, his name's Josh. He lives in Central Missouri. We grew up childhood friends. We'd always joked, just serial entrepreneurial minds, joked about starting a business. And then every time we saw each other, we always joked, we don't have the courage or we're not going to do it. We're just going to keep talking about this forever. We'd have a drink, cheers, and just laugh about it. COVID put us at home a lot, where we finally said, do we rip the Band-Aid off and just try? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? And you find a million excuses of why you shouldn't do it, can't do it. And then one day I remember I was sitting in a parking lot in St. Louis, and we were drawing on a napkin, and we came up with our logo. And we were both like, holy cow, like, I think we got a pretty good logo. We got 3 products I think we may launch. Like, do we want to do it? And we still talked ourselves out of it for like a month and a half of like,
sure, yeah.
It's not going to work. There's a million businesses like this. Like, we're crazy. But then in like May of 2020, still stuck at home, still, tinkering around, busy as can be, we decided to pull the trigger. And fast forward today, it is doing really, really well for a small business. Well is a relative term. We've got a million challenges, still trying to grow as fast as we possibly can, but we're in a place today that I didn't think we would be, just from simply pulling the Band-Aid off.
And it's just you and your partner, right? You have no other employees?
Correct. We outsource some tasks that we cannot simply manage. I think one thing in today's world, there's a lot of ways to bring in other help to do those things. But yeah, it's just me, and his name's Josh Anderson. He was a Mizzou grad. So I went to Mizzou to visit him. He came to Westminster. He has a very fond opinion of Westminster as well. But yeah, we started it then. It's still just us two. And then with the support of our wives, who we bounce a lot of Grillheads ideas off. But yeah.
And you currently market or sell your products to 88 different stores in the St. Louis area. Is that correct?
Correct. St. Louis, mid-Missouri. And then I think we just picked up our 89th store in Southwest Missouri.
Wow. Nice. Now I'm a Kansas City girl. Now, are you going to get into the Kansas City barbecue market?
We need to.
Yes, you do.
We absolutely need to. We are the Schnucks in Columbia. We're in a couple stores in Jefferson City.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Southwest now by Springfield, but yeah, there's nowhere in Kansas City yet. And but now that you say that, I'm just scratching my head. Why are we not?
Yes. Yeah. You need to get on that bandwagon. We love our barbecue up there.
We do. Yeah. It's some tough competition, but I think we got 3 dry rubs. They're really, really good. So yeah, I think it would be, that seems like the next stop.
That's awesome. So last question. We invited you on this podcast and, we were interested in learning more about your career after the Tassel and learning about the second business. But what experiences have led you to want to give back to Westminster and become more engaged as an alum?
Can you repeat that last part? Sorry.
Just what led you to become more engaged as an alum?
I think that your third question of like, what would I have done different? And thinking longer term, there were so many people that at the time I didn't realize it, but that were there to help and offer advice, offer credence, connect you to people when I got out of school. And at the time you're like, oh, they're super nice. But I don't think I truly up until the last few years, truly understood what they were doing to help out and that they didn't have to do that at all, that they were giving up their time, resources, and connections to do that. And it's honestly probably a regret that I didn't understand that at the time. And again, I think that was the mentality of like, hey, what's best for Aaron? But if you think about the circle around you and that they were helping you, I think knowing that I could have that same impact and that, prospective students are sitting where I probably once was and they don't know what to do and they're going to ask for help. I think just appreciating the network and what that looks like, creating value for those around you, like I've said, numerous times throughout our 25 minutes here. But I think that's opened my eyes that I've been very fortunate to have some of the success and to be able to launch a business like we just talked about and to be able to do a few of these things that I can't imagine students don't need that. So if a student ever needs help, I just want to be able to, be a resource for those that were for me. I think that's the rightful thing to do. I want Westminster to prosper. I would not be where I am today without Westminster. It profoundly changed my life for the better. Just connections that I, still am in contact with day to day. It's a wonderful place that I want to see thriving for, the next 300-400 years that, because it is truly a gem of the Midwest that's, and I tell my wife this, she didn't go there, so she doesn't quite understand it. But if you go to Westminster, you just do not understand how good you have it, how wonderful of a place that it is. And, the rising tide lifts all ships. Every student that goes there comes out and does well. It's good for the school as a whole. So as an alumni, I need to step up and continue to support Westminster the way that Westminster supported me.
Awesome. Maybe our marketing department needs to hire you on.
I don't know about that. Yeah. I just think back, when I was a 22-year-old kid, I kept asking for help and I never understood it. I just didn't. Those people had to be like, man, this kid needs to realize that we're taking time out of our day to do these things. And I joke with those people today of like, you truly took the time out to help and I had no idea what you were doing for me. So just making sure I'm giving back the way they did.
That's awesome. Well, you're giving back by giving our current students advice and students, that will, be here after, James and I are gone. So your podcast and your advice will live on in infamy. So
yeah. If it helps one person, it's worth it. That's, I hope it helps you.
Yeah. Well, and James is our internship coordinator. So I'm
awesome.
sure if you ever need any help at either of your two careers, come knock on our door, give us an email. We'll be happy to send our current students your way.
We're always considering that. James, that's awesome. Can't recommend enough for students to get involved, even if it's an unpaid small project, just a project that you get your hands on and get experience. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Well, I greatly appreciate your plug, Westminster is very fortunate to have a very supportive and active alumni basis. We've had many students, and as you know, that have gotten opportunities because of our alumni. So we're very fortunate in our office just to have that support. And again, we can't thank you enough for just taking the time out of your day to meet with us. And
thank you all. Yeah,
just for the support for our students.
Yeah, it's terrific what you all are doing. And again, for the students, take the time to listen to any of these. Michelle, James, you guys do a great job. It's awesome. And it's something that I wish when we were there, we would have had, but the podcasting world has evolved. So it's a quick 30 minutes. It's really fun.
We're taking it one day at a time. Yeah. We're growing slowly but surely.
That same thing. Yeah, I hear you, James.
Well, I echo what James said. Thank you for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you on campus sometime soon. If not, maybe next spring for Alumni Weekend.
I hope so. Look forward to it.